Hi, Kat here for Lightwave Digital. In today's video, we're going to be talking about text in Lightwave Modeler. Now, text is one of the fundamental things that Lightwave was created to produce in the form of flying logos, text, fonts, essentially a 3D title generator way back in 1990 when it first initially released as a single product known as Lightwave 3D on the video toaster systems for the Amiga 2000 and 4000 platforms. Now, fast forward to 2024, and we've got Lightwave Layout and Lightwave Modeler, and we still need the desire to create text. Now, we've got some more advanced tools, obviously, from that period of time, 34 years ago. So let's go over some of them now. Starting in a fresh instance of Lightwave Modeler, we have a section here under the Create tab called Text, and we have a number of functions in here that are quite handy. Now, they may seem a little deceptive at first to new users, but to older users, this will seem very apparent. However, there are some new tools in here that you should be aware of. First thing you're going to want to do when you're working with text is you want to be able to manage fonts. Now, as of Lightwave 2015, no matter which operating system you were on, whether it was Windows or whether it was Mac OS, you would be able to see any type of font available to your system. And this is no different on the Windows system, which I currently am on, Windows 10 Pro. And I have all kinds of fonts loaded. I think I have fonts that I've loaded and carried through on this system from a box that was probably 15, almost 20 years old. So I've got fonts in here that are true type fonts or TTF fonts that really don't exist anymore. However, you can load basically true type fonts, OTF fonts, and of course, type 1 PS fonts or PostScript fonts. Any of those fonts will work in Lightwave Modeler and as well Lightwave Layout now. So if you want to basically set a default for your text, this would be the place to do it. I generally work with Arial Black 900 or Arial Black 4 or Arial 400, pardon me. And I can just basically hit done, and that's going to be the type of text that I want to work with. Now, there are a couple of different ways to work with text. Simply firing up the text tool and hitting in a view. If you have the numerical entry box popped up, it's going to give you the option to scale your text. You can obviously control where it's centered. There's a kerning control or current control, which will allow you to spread out your text, as you can see in the upper window. And there's also a sharp and buffered corners. Now, to really see this, you got to zoom in. It's going to be buffered versus sharp. It's just basically throwing some additional points in there so that if you do choose to extrude something or add some additional details, you've got some additional geometry to work with. But one of the things that catches people off guard is this problem here. Way down here, you might see an error, and it will pop up occasionally. Most of the time, it looks fine, except in certain scenarios. And here we've just hit that scenario. Basically, this is an error with OpenGL. It has nothing to do with Lightwave Modeler whatsoever. We can hit return on this, so that it just made that text. We can save this. Save it as meowing cat. And then we can send it over to Lightwave Layout, and you notice that that problem is not here in this version of OpenGL. It just happens to be an error that pops up in Lightwave Modeler, and if you go into VPR, you are not going to have that problem. However, there are certain situations where using certain tools to extrude this text could produce some problems, and that just happens to be the fact of different ways that text are created using the vector information in the text files and how those may or may not throw some of the tools in Lightwave Modeler for a loop. So let's go and demonstrate that right now. Using just my regular text that I've created here, I can already go and hit modify, or pardon me, multiply, and I can extrude this. We don't have any problems there, that's fine. Okay, that looks good. No issues there. We still have this issue on the K, but again, if we save it and go back, we don't see that error. It's not going to show up in render, It's just an OpenGL funkery that's been part of Windows since the beginning of time. Well, not the beginning of time, about 1994. So let's go back and undo this and try another method of kind of extruding this. Let's go thicken. Now thicken is going to produce an error. Generally, it's going to kick it out on the O in certain text where there's a wraparound. And this is effectively an issue where the font is drawing from a start point into an end point, and where it meets in the middle, this tool has some problems with it. So if I hit enter, you're going to see all kinds of wackiness with the geometry in here. Don't worry about these back-facing polygons over here. They do not actually exist, and if you were to check going into sketch mode, you'll see that they don't actually have edges. It's just literally a OpenGL drawing issue. But this seems all kinds of screwed up. So let's go back over to Lightwave layout, and we can see that that issue pops up. So this is an issue. Well, you could go and fix this into Modeler. Really, it just comes down to use a different tool to get your text to be thickened, and if necessary, get the text tool to do that. So let's talk about how to do that now. There's an advanced version of text creation that's now available under text layers. This tool comes up and it does a wonderful job of doing text and giving them some 3D depth. To preview, hit 2D so we can see what's going on. And then let's say I want to extrude, say 10%, and we will hit OK. And now it's gone and created text with beveled edges. And you'll notice that it created a bunch of layers up here. So every single letter is now on an individual object layer, which is great, and especially when I use the words meowing cat, because it becomes exactly that many object layers. Let's go to the layers panel. That's my layers panel. Here we go. And we can see they are named, and I can shift click them, select them all. And you'll also notice if we go into the surface editor, you're going to have three different types of surfaces that were created. There's going to be the bevel itself, there's going to be the text face, and then there's going to be the text side. So let's very quickly just reassign some surfaces here. Let's make this text bevel, we'll make that greenish. The text face will make this bluish. And the text side we will make red, just to make it really distinguishable. All right. And then we'll change from sketch view to texture, and you'll see exactly what's taking place here. And we do have some beautiful looking text. We've got the front face. Everything's there. We don't have any errors. Looks good to me. So we can save this. We can send it over to Modeler. One moment. Let's make sure I got that saved. And here we go. Now this obviously leaves me with the scene that's now got an object with several letters in it. Just fantastic. I can parent them all to one, or parent them to a null, and we've got text that's ready to fly around, have things done to it with deformations or displacement maps, all kinds of fun stuff. All right, let's go back to Modeler here and take a look at some of the other tools that we've got. Just clear this out. All right, let's close this out. And let's take a look at some of the other text options here. Logo, fantastic little, quick and dirty. This is my logo, meow, and it automatically gives you that extrusion depth. So if you want something very, very fast, you can do it. Okay. Let's go and take a look at multi-text. Multi-text is great for doing things like, your Star Wars introduction or something similar to that. Let's go to the second line here. I've got meowing cat, and then I want the second line. Long time meowing. Because I had some different settings, of course. I've got some text overlay issues. So let's go back here and redo that. Let's go more. Oh, wait, multi-text. Line pitch. There's the kerning. It's sort of X. And let's redo this so it's meowing cat. So it's all in caps. Okay. So due to the scaling of this, I've got text overlined, but each one of these is undoable. Okay. So let's go back over to multi-text, and we can change our font to spread that out, or very simply, we need to give ourselves a space in between. Something like that. And now I've got my text in there. Very easy. So if I want to save that, boom, let's go scroll text. And just a moment here, get rid of that layer. So we'll save that, send it over to Lightwave layout. There we go. And we would have to set it up like they did at ILM to do the text. No, the way they did that was very simple. We're just going to pitch this 90 degrees, and we're going to put our camera somewhere roughly about there. And we're going to tilt this down. And we'll look through that camera. And now we've got our scroll text. And we go from, say, 0 to 120 frames. And we're going to move it on the Z-axis. And just continuously move it. Now, we might have to either change our spacing or change the height of our camera. But now you've got your Star Wars introductory type style scrolling font. Let's actually change this to something yellowish. That's about right. And yeah, I think we're good with that. Let's go and take our camera, make sure that we have a proper resolution here. Let's go UHDV. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, and go and open up our scene editor here. We don't need our environment light. We don't need our regular light. But we will need to make a change on a surface so it is just the surface being luminous. So we'll go back to our surface editor and we'll go and crank the luminosity up. and we'll change it to that yellowish color. Bada boom. And there you go. We got some Star Wars-ish looking text. And because Lightwave will anti-alias this really beautifully, you shouldn't have any problems with edges, and will also support motion blur. So this goes all the way back to the first versions of Lightwave where people were doing flying lows and flying text, and they needed stuff like this, and this is what it was originally designed for, and then very quickly fell into the hands of artists that wanted to fly spaceships and other things like submarines and all kinds of UFO type stuff, and thus the history of Lightwave began, becoming that tool for many years, the king of the crop. So let's go 5 meters. And you can use this for basically any type of scrolling text. Um, Fantastic for doing flying text, building logos into the sides of buildings, whatever you want to do. Because these are all individual objects now, I could use things like bullet on top of them, or use other types of displacement effects. Anything you pretty much want. You can set them on fire with Turbulence FD because they are real geometry. They're not just fonts drawing something on the screen as a um, pretend kind of instance or volumetric property. So let's go back to Lightwave Layout here, or Modeler. There's one more tool that I want to show you, and this one's interesting. Let's see, you've got that big, bunch of text. There's another tool in here called Make Text. Make Text will work with a imported text file. So let's go and make a text file. Okay, Star Wars. Kind of sucks now because bad writing. Maybe it can be saved by fans using Lightwave 3D. All right. So just to be safe, I'm going to put this onto individual lines, kind of like we did before with that other text tool, and see what we get. So I'm going to save this as Star Wars. Okay. So let's select that file on my desktop. There we go. Okay. And now we've got text. So it's going to basically be justified in a certain way. But that's okay. This is more or less what we wanted. And it's more or less what we typed in, and it's effectively ready to go. We can obviously F2 that to center it. We'll go and reposition ourselves for A so we can see everything all at once in the viewport. Save this. Let's go Star Wars scroll, and we'll set it over. Boom. Now we've got another set of text in here because we created it on a flat facing towards us kind of deal. We need to rearrange some things here. Let's make sure this is pitched 90. There we go. And we'll make this go a little bit slower, I think. So it's like 200 frames. Boom. T. And zip it along like so. We'll put our camera somewhere more useful again. Might tilt our camera down a little bit more. take a look at this from the perspective view. Probably 20 degrees should do it. Okay, and as that's going by, obviously, we can see if this is going to motion blur with us. So we'll give ourselves some minimum samples to make sure that that motion blur is smoothed out, and we'll re-engage VPR. And now we've got something that looks very similar to what you would have expected in 1977 sitting in a movie theater or at a drive-in watching the movie for the first time. Granted, adjustments for getting everything into frame or whatever is the issue. Again, just bring ourselves up a little bit. So there you go. All right, so that's just a basic introduction and exploratory of the text tools that are in Lightwave Modeler now. We'll do another one when we go over to Lightwave Layout.